on an exclusive, we're going to our correspondent directly from the field. Hello, my friends. How you doing today?
Hey there. Oh, that was almost funny.
Yeah, no, it was funny. You're the one in the field, so it's very funny.
That's right. I do have a good view of streetcars going up and down King Street. I'm live from downtown Toronto, providing value. I get to see
Wait,
many
wait.
a
There's a conference in Toronto. No wonder it's not worth anything.
conference. It's a one-day conference in Toronto. It's a world tour, they refer to it as. I assume that means there's multiple cities, Toronto being one of the cities. And I was able to chat and see people and have free lunch. Exactly what you'd
Nice.
expect from a conference.
Exactly what you expect from a one-day conference. Right.
Right.
So, my wife and I are leaving Saturday morning to your favorite place on earth, Paul.
Disney World?
That is correct.
Nice.
That is correct. So Sunday we will be at Hollywood Studios.
Uh-huh.
Sunday we will be at Epcot. Monday we will be at Hollywood Studios.
Interesting. So you want to do Cosmic Rewind? That's the goal, I assume?
That is the goal, yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Have you already done your park reservations?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Have the park reservations, have the hotel reservations.
Perfect. Yeah. So then I would highly recommend Genie Plus for Hollywood Studios.
Yes,
it is
we will
not
definitely do
required
that.
in any way for Epcot, however.
Oh, good to know.
Epcot's easy to walk on. As long as you rope drop, you're fine. But Hollywood Studios is torturous if you do not have Genie Plus. Yeah.
Yeah, we did it the last time we did it, and we stayed at the Dolphin or the Swan, the same property. So we got the 30-minute early entry.
Right.
And we couldn't get a reservation for Rise of the Resistance, you had to pay extra for that, so we just booked it over there and got on. Smart. And the line was 30 minutes or something. It wasn't bad. I would wait in that line at 30 minutes all the time. Like I would just, if it was always 30 minutes, I'd just loop.
I'm pretty sure Cosmic Rewind, there is no standby still. It's only queue, only virtual queue. So right. 6:55, wake up, 7 a.m., jump on that queue. Yeah. Right. It is a spectacular ride. Did I describe it last time when we were talking?
You did.
Yeah. It was a spectacular ride. I highly recommend it.
Nice. Well, I'm also hoping to hit Morimoto's. I'll be thinking of you guys if I do.
That would be nice. Yeah. I enjoyed that venue.
That was a good trip.
Any Star Wars rides?
Rise of the Resistance is, Hollywood Studios. So that's Rise of the Resistance, and then they have the Millennium Falcon ride. So we'll do both those. I was thinking about
Mickey Mini Runaway Railroad.
That one was so good. So we'll definitely be doing that.
Nice.
I was thinking about registering to do the build your own lightsaber, but I kind of don't like the build your own lightsaber. Like I could actually do that at home and it'd be just fine. There's plenty of good DIYs on how to do that. I kind of prefer the replicas that match a character.
Well, the 15-year-old did it. I took him to do that at Disneyland in August-ish. Or last August, and it was not really about the lightsaber, even though it's a cool lightsaber. It was the 30-minute experience that you go through, right? It almost felt like you were a Jedi and going through training, and there's a whole sort of play to it, which I thought was amazing.
I can imagine Howard dress up.
Yep, sure.
And then with a beard.
That's right.
That's true. That's true.
Do you happen to have a conference, or are you just going at?
No. Of course, I have a conference. I don't even understand the question.
I thought you were just traveling at your leisure.
To Orlando? No.
No, just driving by. No.
Yeah, no. Orlando would never be a place I would travel for pleasure.
Nice.
What is the reason why? I know why I go to a conference. But what will be the reason that an executive will take their time, besides going to Disney World, to go to a conference?
Oh, they're completely worthless. No, they're completely worthless. Like the guarantee is, as soon as I register for a conference, the sales calls start. It's guaranteed, right? So whatever I'm going to do at a conference has to be worth more than the sales calls I'm going to get. And we're both on the vendor side at this point. Right, I work for an analyst organization. Paul works for a vendor. You work for a vendor. And as an executive, really all that's left for me is networking because there is zero content for executives.
Really? So you consider that the content? So should we do something like to teach people like content for dummies or something like that?
So let me tell you where this came from. This is actually my topic this time instead of normally it's Paul's topic. He's so good at coming up with topics, but this one I was so frustrated about. I kind of forced the issue a little bit. So I was at KubeCon last week, right? Yeah. Which is a Kubernetes DevOps conference. Really good conference, especially for practitioners. And now I get invited to all the media and analyst stuff because I work for an analyst organization. So I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of other analysts listening to people talk about the things that the conference organizers think is important. And I'm sitting in the room and they're doing kind of the future of DevOps, right? And it's supposed to be a 10-year look into the future.
So platform engineering type conversations.
Kind of. Okay. And they have a guy who runs a little kind of tech startup that's DevOps-y focused. And then they have DevOps Engineer 1, DevOps Engineer 2, and DevOps Engineer / Team Leader number 3, all of which are from big tech companies. Right. Okay. So there's no diversity whatsoever in opinion on the floor because they're all part of massive DevOps organizations that are very tech forward, that only think one way. So first off, that's a tremendous failure. Right. The chance that they represent the totality of the market is less than 0%. Like it's negative 500%. Because they're so echo chamber focused, they can't possibly represent anybody except those who live in that particularly well-defined echo chamber.
And they live in a world that only works in a perfect sense, right? There's no constraints. Correct. They don't have economic issues, regulatory boundaries. The only thing they know is best possible outcome.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. And so I'm sitting in the audience and I'm watching as my peers take copious amounts of notes. The whole time I'm sitting there like this going, I've found nothing of note to mention. And every word that I hear is an echo of words that I've heard for the last decade. And it suddenly occurred to me, this is why not only do I get no representation, no value from these conferences, but it's also why I don't get any value from the standard analyst stuff. Right? Because they're reporting on information fed to them by an echo chamber that they don't necessarily realize is an echo chamber.
Right.
And so all we do is create this big cycle of echo chamber that frankly is dizzying. And finally I got frustrated and I'm like, you guys haven't talked about people even one time. And I talked to the organizers. I said, look, you guys really need to, if you're going to do these things, you're going to put a group of people up there, put an executive up there, put a people manager up there that sits at the top of the chain. And then when they go, well, in 10 years, we're going to have this all automated, they can go, no, you're not.
So there won't be an org chart. It'll all be bots.
Right. Well, why won't it be automated, Howard? Well, it won't be automated because most of my workforce is sitting right around 40.
Right.
In a decade, they'll be 50. They still won't be comfortable with the command line. So all your DevOpsy stuff is still going to be stuck in the closet with the rest of the DevOpsy stuff. And the fact that you've not evolved it won't change the fact that I still can't use it. I'm 20 years away because I got 20 years before those people are retirement age. I've got 20 years before I can replace GUIs with command lines, before I can replace ease of use as my number one concern with effectiveness from the command line, with APIs. Then you add in the API security challenges and you're an easy 5 more years. Just tack on 5 years because we're not going to make any progress for the next 5 years while we try to figure that out. And all of you have said, like they got asked about DevSecOps. All of them said universally, it's not our problem. Don't make it the developer's problem.
Really?
To which my response was, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Well, whose problem do they believe it is?
Security.
Oh.
So wait,
wait,
they write insecure code and it's not their problem.
Correct.
To fix their code. It's someone else's problem.
Correct.
because some
Correct.
other bot that somebody else will build will walk through the code and insert the appropriate
No, because
constraints?
that's actually what they want. Yes, that's actually what they want. They want an AI tool that does code inspection.
I see.
Okay,
And
wait.
modification.
Correct, which doesn't work and isn't ever going to work. And if it actually did work, then I just have the AI write the code. I mean, if we're just making up shit we want to work, I don't need the developers anymore. I'll just use an AI. I'll describe the code in English. I'll hit go. The AI will develop the code. It'll be at least secure as developers that refuse to learn security.
You know what the most secure code does? Nothing.
Yeah. It types "Hello World."
When this service doesn't actually engage and start up, it is the most secure service you'll ever use.
That is true. That's true.
Right. And if you're inserting performance hitting, availability hitting code because you don't care about the code because you're security, and you're a coder who doesn't care about security, then that service won't work.
Yeah, I mean, I can write extremely secure and extremely fast code. The first line says "go to end."
Right. Right.
So notification from someone that actually lead the teams, that actually seeing what is happening, and then the people that were there were like on an utopia, like Paul mentioned. What value? If I know that you specifically, Howard, you like the tech side. If you were if you were a tech guy, someone that is still on the keyboard, was there any real value without the hype?
Sure. So if I was a DevOps engineer, it's a great conference. It's a really good conference. It's extremely focused. It's narrow enough that you kind of know what to expect when you get there, and all the vendors are really focused around the topics. It's got enough variety that depending on where that you kind of have a spot you can go to, regardless of where you sit in the specific kind of DevOps workflow, right? It's a very good conference for that.
What would you come out knowing? Like, you're going in as an existing DevOps engineer, you're coming out knowing what more?
You get to see like the direction where the products are going. You'd get to see especially a lot of the new things that have shown up. You probably get a better idea of, if you don't have a really good handle around like API security, you get a really good handle around kind of what are the topics that companies are investing in right now, which I think is important to know. Like there's a ton of nuance, and then it's training. You'd come out with training likely in some piece of technology you didn't already know or felt that you needed to learn. Right, your company is going to do X, and so you go and learn X.
Some certification. Got it.
Yeah, but ultimately there are no conferences for those who have to build a strategy. There are no conferences for those who have to learn how to build something, and you really have to be aware going into it. All of these conferences are echo chambers. Right? If they looked at what are the different perspectives we could get, and if we've got 4 seats, let's fill it with let's just have one perspective represented by each chair, not the same represented across all the chairs. I think the dynamics of the conference would change a whole lot, and the conversations would be so much more interesting.
Yeah, because I'm going to that situation saying, tell me more about what life looks like if I didn't have that capability at all. And then walk me through the process it took to go from no capability to some capability to whatever you're describing, which is sort of ultimate capability. Because I'm at the very beginning, and I have to think that wasn't easy. It wasn't about hiring someone. It was about creating process. It was creating skill set.
Even if I'm not at the very beginning, right? Even if my maturity is a 1,
right?
Why is it worth the investment to go to a 2? Why is it worth the investment to go from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 4? Like each of those are large investments. They're not small investments, right? These are it's measured more like the Richter scale. It's not a linear growth, right? So it's logarithmic. So tell me, why is it worth it for me to make the investment to jump from a 2 to a 3? Right? Why should this become core language to my business? And there's none of that. There's no strategic conversation. There's none of that. There's no attempt to be well-rounded. There's no attempt to really talk about nuance. And the shame of it is, okay, let's say it's 80% practitioner. 20% leadership. Let's say it's 90% practitioner, 10% leadership.
Right.
They also don't arm any of them to be champions within their own organization in the language that an executive would need to increase their investment.
Right.
And at each of these dedicated conferences I go to, I talk to, like I do interviews with end users, right? And the number one response is, I wish my executive team was more bought in.
Right.
Okay, so what are you doing to be a champion? Right? Like, you say your executives don't actually understand it. How are you championing the understanding? What are you doing to advocate? What are you doing to enable them to have an understanding of what these things mean? Right? Do they know what DevOps means? No. Okay, cool. So why don't you explain it to me in the way that you would explain it to an executive? And it's 4 words in, you're lost.
It's funny. Each one of those conferences have a section on the registration page of, how do I create the business case to convince my boss to send me to this conference? When it also should have, how do I create the business case to convince my boss to invest more in this capability once I'm done? Yet that's completely absent. That the concept no longer exists. It's learn more, hope you can apply it. Good luck. Shake your hands, move on. I also get the sense, especially a very practitioner-heavy conference, they lose their relative importance. So I'm going to give you a quote today. So somebody said to me today, they just came from a DevOps conference. I won't use their name just in case they happen to see this particular pod. They said, data is only a slice of what we do. DevOps is the entire rest of the pie, which is philosophically not true in terms of the purpose and goal of the organization. But they're coming off a DevOps conference that in some way convinced them that the relative importance of DevOps changed, which seems strange to me. It's almost like you have to take that topic and say, you realize you play in a technology ecosystem that looks like this, right? And you're a Lego block in that picture versus you were the block, right? There's only one block and you're it.
That's also a statement that says technology for technology's sake.
Right.
If DevOps is the purpose, that's just a technology. We don't work in a world that's technology for technology's sake. The world we work in is enabling business to make more freaking money, to do their jobs better, to be more efficient, to be more effective. At the DevOps conference last week, somebody said up on stage that DevOps is digital transformation. That they were one and the same. And I went, no, it's digitizing.
No, it's very different, actually.
Like, they're not even remotely the same. How is DevOps customer centric?
Right.
Like,
tell me about the customer
DevOps,
journey.
How am I customer centric?
Right.
Well, right. It's because you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. You have no clue what digital transformation actually means, what the purpose actually is. You've studied it 0%.
Right.
Right. And you get up on stage and you make statements like this, and then all of a sudden everybody's tired of digital transformation. Of course they are. Right? Because no one uses it correctly. There's no value ascribed to something that you use as a generic term you throw out for everything, so you seem like you know what you're talking about. You have no clue what you're talking about. Yep. Who the hell gave you a microphone?
They're making this big cliff drive, right? They're talking about digital transformation. They're diving off. They're hitting the ocean, and the ocean's the DevOps. But you've missed, several stories of actual other things that are just as important before you hit that water.
Yeah, it's correlation does not equal causation. If I go through a digital transformation journey, it is likely I need to do agile and DevOps to some degree. Those things do not equal digital transformation. There is correlation, there is not causation.
Yeah, they participate, sure. They help in the process of delivering a digital project. I buy all those things.
Absolutely. And they're both designed to give me the things I need to fail fast.
Right.
Right. Which is one of the things I try to transition into a new way of working in a digitally transformed business. I need to be able to fail fast. Otherwise, how could I ever meet my customer where they are going if I can't get there quickly?
Yep. And I agree that adding an executive to a panel like that allows sort of a reframing of what's important, right? Because as you just mentioned, what's important to the business is, growing revenue and being profitable. But sometimes what's important to the business is neither of those two things, but the valuation of the company itself. What investors or bankers or, my owner thinks the value of the company is, to which I need to align to, right? It might not be revenue. It just might say, well, I need you to be a third biggest player selling this product, and anything else doesn't matter. And if you become the
Sure.
third biggest player, then I can create a multiple of 17 times. Great.
I don't
That's what I
I
can
don't
focus.
care about all revenue. I only care about ARR or MRR.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, ultimately, the job isn't. It never is to build revenue. It's to do whatever the shareholders have decided is the important thing, which is delivered to you through a board.
Right.
Right. And thus theoretically the CEO. Right.
And what's
So
the biggest impact and um, the biggest constraint to building out a company, of course, is people, which was your original point to say. So if there's a panel that doesn't discuss people's capability and evolution, then what's it all about? Then it's just tool for tool's sake, knowledge for knowledge sake versus applicability in actual humans.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and I don't know what you do with knowledge that's not applicable. I mean, I guess it makes you cool on Jeopardy, but these aren't those kind of questions. It's not that kind of knowledge. Right. I mean, I would have got just as much value in a World Economic Forum panel on, the macroeconomics of the Southeast Sahara. It had the exact same true applicability in what was going to happen in 10 years in technology when you're delivered such an incredibly incomplete picture.
So in that panel that you're on, would there have been a question, or how would they have answered the question? Have you ever done this in the real life? Whatever you just described, this end goal. Have you ever literally tried to do this for this CPG company, this bank? And then what happened when you attempted it?
No, the answer would have been no, because they've never
Right.
been out of tech. Like, as
Right.
they all went through their resume was all tech.
Right. I've been 17
Right.
years at Microsoft. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's 17 years here, 4 years here, 5 years here, 3 years here,
Right.
all of which was Silicon Valley.
Right.
Right. And it kind of doesn't matter because they still didn't drive any of it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. You participated on a DevOps team. Maybe you introduced the concept of DevOps to the organization.
Right.
Whoop-de-doo. You didn't make the hiring decision. You didn't make the firing decision. You didn't make the staffing decision. You didn't make the strategy decision. You didn't make the investment decision. You didn't deal with the budget. You didn't have to make the decision on, I have the same amount of money as last year and my priorities have shifted. How can I shift my money? Where do I find green funds for this?
Right.
Right. And none of them, you could tell, not a single one of them had any experience with that. And it's like, none of that is actually helpful. If you're trying to tell me where am I going to be in 10 years, put someone up there that has a 10-year plan, or put someone up there that has a 3-year plan. Because most of us that have a 3-year plan have a 10-year target. Like, we have some idea of where we want to be in a decade.
Do you think they gear this content for the exceptional and the unicorns, or the people that are leading edge, they're pioneering, and not everyone else who is much less mature than how they're describing?
I mean, yeah, absolutely, and it's specifically the practitioner unicorn.
Yeah.
Right. It's those that have decided to make the investment and are hoping to get an ROI. But again, because they have no well-rounded discussion, it's all based on the backs of individual engineers.
Right.
Right. What am I going to do with that? You know what I mean? A bunch of individual contributors
Because you don't
working
work
on
for
what
me, and
individual
therefore,
contributors.
yeah.
Well, plus, even if you do, I need you to think like a team, and they don't even talk about that.
Right.
Right. I saw no content that was focused on this is how a team operates. Right. I saw no content on this is how you would develop or design a program within your organization. Something kind of high level and strategic. I'm not even trying to pick on this conference. Pick any of the conferences I've been to in the last year. Right. Black Hat? No. DEF CON, holy crap, no. Right. VMworld? Not going to happen.
Right.
Right. The closest I got to content was some of the things I presented for a partner conference, because those were all about, how do I become more strategic and help my customer achieve their strategy?
Right.
Right. Because that's really where they're focused. They don't want to hear from me about, what technologies does my engineer need to be trained in. They want to hear about, hey, my customers are going through this journey. How do I become valuable in that journey? Because I'm not today.
Right. I'd love to hear how those individuals in the real world need to be measured, and how a panelist would tackle that subject, right? So, those DevOps engineers, just as an example, again, in my organization, and me being a bank, let's say, are focused on delivering on this project with high quality. They're not individually measured in the amount of automation that occurs in this particular line of business.
Sure.
So since that's true, how am I creating success within the team who are only measured on the success of the project? How do I balance those two problems where you're telling me I should be 80% automated, but that's not how my team of 50 DevOps engineers are motivated to succeed. And
No,
I'm not sure it's
and
in
even
my
then,
best interest to change that motivation.
yeah, and even then, right? What are your priorities? Right? Is
Right.
your focus on a smooth rollout? Because that's a day zero problem,
Right.
right? And then we're ignoring the day one problem. Okay, so is your concern security? Okay, well, how are you going to measure the transition in security when you don't pay your developers to think about security? You pay them to be fast.
Right.
Right? Like that's part of the problem. Again, there's just none of that content. And so how is someone supposed to know if they're measuring people correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we do that. We go, all right, did your projects get delivered on time? Whoop-de-frickin' do. How much does one developer really have to do with that?
Right.
And in a microservices world, they have more to do with it than they do in a monolithic world. Okay, so that becomes easier to measure, but is that the right thing to measure?
Right.
And show me content presented at a conference by someone with any expertise whatsoever that talked about that, because I don't see it.
Right. And how they evolved from measuring somebody on a successful task to something a little more grander. Like that sounds complex to me. How do I create a baseline on grandeur?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And since there's no content for it, where do I get the information? Well, I get it from analysts. Well, I just told you the information analysts receive. They're not receiving anything helpful at all.
Right.
I do not have a clearer or better understanding of how a DevOps team should operate inside an organization because I sat in on the analyst track. I actually don't have a better idea of what's going on at all, other than what I could get from any marketing slide from any vendor that operates in the space.
Right.
All of which, as near as I can tell, is backed by bullshit.
And how close were the slides? If I were to take the logo off 5 of those decks, would you be able to tell which deck was which vendor?
Oh, God, no. God, no. Like if you take all the trade, if you remove the trademark language, it all just gets whitewashed. It's the same 12 terms. Like,
Right.
we talked about that before, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's not only the same 12 words, but none of them are appealing to someone who sits in the buyer seat.
Right.
I'm convinced if you change the language and focus on language that would resonate with a buyer, you'd probably do 40. Like you'd probably shorten your sales cycle by 40%.
Right.
Because if I could get my questions answered and know why I want to do this and drive the importancy factor in my mind by looking at your website, there goes 40% of the time it takes you to build that yourself. Find time in my calendar, get in front of me, sit in the room, find the right words, answer the right questions in the right way. Like all of that, that's easily 40% of your sales cycle. If you could do that on your website, and now I'm calling you, yeah, it's game over. You win.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
I've already down selected you because I'm calling you.
Correct.
Yep.
And yet none of them are focused on that.
I think a pretty big gap is context too, and by that I mean what you've just described to me in this session is step 7, but I don't know whether there's 20 steps or 8 steps. Right? I don't know what happens when I'm done what you just said to me, or even
Right.
if I can do what you're saying. Is this only a quarter of the way there? Do I have lots more to go to which either hasn't been invented yet or I just haven't told you about yet? So what's my actual investment of time and energy and people? You've described none of that to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not even lucky enough to get what step number it is. Right. Like you just kind of walk into the session and go, and I've been in many sessions where I read the description, I read the little synopsis, I show up, 3 slides in, I go, well, yeah, this isn't at all what I was expecting, and I get up and leave.
Yeah.
And it's either it seemed like it was step 4 and in fact was step 1.5, or it seemed like it might have been step 1.5 and was in fact step 7. Right. And as near as I can tell, there's no real work being done by the committee that determines what content shows up to make sure, does the synopsis fit? Is this good content? Do they present well? It's basically, yeah, that sounds interesting, and they've got a good LinkedIn, so we'll do that.
Right. In fairness, though, it's happened to both
and it's
of
not
us
duplicated.
where marketing has predefined what the content and the topic, and they wrote the paragraph, and we look at it being the presenter saying, this doesn't resonate with me, and we'll present something else, or
for sure,
adjacent to or slightly different. So sometimes
sure,
we
100%.
we do it ourselves.
Yep. Or the requesting vendor does the same thing. Like we get that a lot as an analyst firm. Hey, can we get someone from your firm to come present on multi-cloud?
Right.
Can you be more specific? Well, no, we just want multi-cloud. Sure.
It's a broad topic. Do you want me to have a perspective on said thing, or what are we looking for here?
And I did go present at a conference where they told me on Monday I was presenting on Tuesday.
Right.
I'm like, I think I'm down for 3 sessions. They're like, oh, we got you for 4. Excuse me? Yeah, and we haven't received the topic for the 4th. Yeah, because I didn't know about it.
That's right.
What is this thing? Oh, you're going to present as part of the keynote. Great.
Right. Now that happened to me last week. I wouldn't say it was purposeful. It was definitely by accident, in that there was a session in the middle of the day just before lunch that the speakers that they had assigned couldn't do it. So they called me up saying, hey, could I slot you in here? And by the way, the topic's already set because everything's printed and we can't make any changes to it. And isn't that interesting? We think you can handle the topic. That was kind of their phrase. And I look at the topic, it was on infrastructure resilience. And I said, well, that's interesting. I don't want to talk about infrastructure resilience. Could I for 30 minutes? I guess. The audience weren't practitioners, so that was helpful. It's not like I was talking about data recovery to a data recovery crowd. At least it was executives. But I said to myself, no, that's not going to work for the interest of the people. So I literally changed it in my head. And as I walked up the stage, I said, welcome to your 2-hour masterclass in data recovery. And they all laughed because it was just a 30-minute conversation on resilience, to which I redefined to be company resilience, how IT participates, IT team resilience, how your team survives things like the pandemic. And then, of course, technology in a little bit, right? To say, listen, there's other things I need to think about in terms of my diverse set of infrastructure and how do I deal with that diverse set of infrastructure from a resilience perspective. And I made that 30 minutes about how you as a CIO in the room care about this word, not infrastructure resilience. That probably wouldn't have played well if the original presenter was presenting. So,
sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the best case study, but certainly what was stated on the agenda was definitely not what I talked about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I did that one. There were no slides, right? They just expected that I had, like that I was aware of it. I'm like, how would I be aware of it? This is the first time we've talked. And I'm like, okay, so I'll do this topic. Well, you can't do that topic because that's not this conference. Okay, well, I'll do this topic. All right, that works. And I said, you get no slides. And they're like, can you do it without slides? Well, of course I can. I have no problem talking without slides. And it ended up turning into a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of kind of State of the Union, and then some Q&A that was really good. So it ended up working out fine. But it's still, it speaks to, I will say conferences are hard. They're hard to set up. They're hard to manage. They're hard to organize. And yet I think some of it is we make it harder than it needs to be by the chaos we create in how we do it.
Right.
It's like, it's not programmatic for the content. It's programmatic for the tactical pieces. Right. Like everybody knows at this, 18 months out, I'm doing contracts for the venue, right? 7 months out, 9 months out, I'm doing contracts for the catering company. 6 months out, I'm confirming and doing all the final contracts for the entertainment. You know what I mean? And it almost feels like the content is secondary.
And it's just logistical. They're filling time slots. Do I have
Correct,
enough
correct. I have
content to
these
fill?
rooms with these slots.
Yeah,
I need this much space in between. Therefore, I need 125 sessions at 55 minutes apiece.
right.
Let's start filling, right? Or I need 100 at 55 minutes and another 110 at 25 minutes. Let's
Right.
start filling slots, right? It's almost like the seating chart at a wedding.
Right.
You know what I mean? I know how big the venue is. I know how many tables I have. I know how many seats are at each table. And now I just have to figure out who I can sit next to each other so that they're the happiest at the tables in relation to their position from, the stage where the bride and groom sit.
Right.
Right. And that's not how we should think about a conference, because that tells me that the venue and the meals are the content and the value. And I don't care about that at all. Like, if you had a really good speaker on a really good topic, I would sit on a blanket in a park. It'd be fine.
Right.
Right? Like, I can walk up to the little hot dog cart there and get refreshments. It's fine. I don't need that. What I need is good content. And I often feel like the content is sacrificed.
I'd like a conference to be more like academic programs, right? So this conference allows you to get 5 different types of diplomas, right? The morning, noon, and night sessions are like semesters, and we've already organized the 101s, 201s, and 301s so that when you finish, you'll have learned through a storyline to achieve this diploma. Are there electives in that day? Sure, but for the most part, we'd like you to follow this plan in order to get this diploma. Not in a literal
Sure.
sense, but in a storyline sense. We want you to have learned these 5 things in the order to which we think you should learn them. But that's not how they're set up in any way.
No.
If anything,
No.
they're set up in like industries, maybe, or maybe some personas, but never the lesson to be learned, right? Never the goal to be achieved.
Right. There's no outcome to a conference other than I get a lot of sales calls.
Right.
Right.
Very
Like, I'm tempted when I register for these conferences, when it asks for my title, I'm just gonna start putting janitor.
Right.
Like a title no one will call on.
Right.
Right. Like nominated stand-in is my title.
Student. I'd use student personally.
Student. Yeah, that would work too.
Nobody's gonna talk to a student.
Right. Contract writer.
Contract writer.
It would actually be hilarious. It'd be fantastic if we started a little like language experiment to see anyone with a CXO title just change it to, and we came up with 3 or 4 things that were just nonsense.
Right.
That we'd start to see at other conferences, like Howard Holton, nominated of no value, like nominated stand-in. You know what I mean? And you start to see those around conferences, and you're like, CIO, I see.
I'd like one to say open for employment.
Open for employment.
Nobody's gonna talk to you.
Right. Looking. Yeah.
Nobody will contact you at all. It's amazing.
It'd be awesome. Here's a QR code to my JDate profile.
Nice.
But I think
Mr.
that
Vargas,
at the end of the day, the idea should be content that helps not only the today, to help the people that go there to learn for the tomorrow, and not have just an utopia, but have something that you can make or take action right now. Yeah, when you mentioned that, I was remembering a long time ago, there were some conferences specifically, I don't remember if it was Microsoft or AWS, that they have a specific executive track just for executives. I don't know if they were providing any value, but it makes sense because an executive make decisions in a different way that a technical folks do. But I think that topic for another day is, should the vendor be speaking just tech jargon, or they should be speaking to partner with the executives? So I think that's a topic for another day. It's been awesome to see you guys. To all our audience, make sure that you share, subscribe, leave us a comment, click the links in the description, and we'll see you on our next episode.